पता है ना क्या करना है यार। चाय कहाँ है? चाय गरम करके छान के ऐसे मिलते हैं। All right. Can I start, sir?
Please.
Thank you so much for accepting my request and joining us. It's such a privilege and honor to have you.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Kalpana Chowdhary, founder of Social Tables, managing trustee and chairperson of Jan Seva Foundation, Being the Change, and Lagna.com. Lagna.com is a matrimony portal for differently able cancer and acid attack survivors. Along with it, I'm co-chairperson of SOCM State Women Entrepreneur Development Council, GSDC, member at FICCI Flow CII IW in Maharashtra, Women Economic Forum, and a TEDx speaker. Before diving into the guest introduction, I would like to take a moment to introduce you with Social Tables. Social Tables is committed to sustainable development program with societal well-being and environmental consciousness. Every week, we bring out to you some of the brightest minds from diverse sectors to discuss over ongoing few significant issues. In this week's speaker series, we have our honorable guest, Mr. Manoj Kumar Nambiarji. Mr. Nambiarji has over 32 years of working experience and is currently with the Aavishkaar Group as the managing director of Arohan Financial Services Limited, the sixth largest NBFC MFI active in 11 low-income state of Central East and Northeast part of India. He started his working career with Modi Xerox in 1988 and then moved into consumer financial services with GE Countrywide in 1995, retail banking with ANZ Grindlays in 1997, and retail asset and business development with ABN Amro Bank NV India in 2000. He moved as head retail banking of National Bank of Oman in 2002, looking after Oman, UAE and Egypt post that worked as chief operating officer of the Alhamrani Nissan Finance Company KSA in 2004 and returned to Oman as the deputy CEO of Ahli Bank SAOG in 2008. He returned to India in June 10th as MD and CEO of Intelle Cash Microfinance Network Company Private Limited and Intellecap Group Company in business of incubating and capacity building of MFIs. In this job, he led setting up the lending business in both the retail and wholesale. This is today a separate company called Intelle Grow space. In September 12, using the parent Intellecap's structuring skill and backed by Aavishkaar Goodwell, Intellecash acquired a 56% contributing stake in Arohan. He is a director on the board of Arohan, Aavishkaar and Tribetech and vice chair of the group executive council at Aavishkaar Group. He has been on the governing body of Microfinance Institution Network, MFIN, the microfinance sector self-regulatory organization from 2013. He served as the president of the MFIN in 2015 and 2019 and is also the current chair of governing body. A warm welcome to you, sir, on our today's speaker series.
Thank you, Kalpana ji. Thank you, appreciate it.
It's our utmost pleasure to have you. So in today's discussion, we are going to discuss about topic is financial inclusion for women a step ahead. Sir, to begin with, to start with, what according to you are the aspects that microfinancing has contributed to the economy?
Yeah. So actually, Kalpana ji, not many people would know that this is a very formal sector in the Indian financial services sector. In fact, the earliest forms of lending happened when Seva Bank, as you all know, was set up in 1974. Yes.
Yes.
And from then, there's been a whole series of activity which has happened, including the SHG program from NABARD, the lot of the not-for-profit organizations becoming NBFCs, and then, of course, as you all know, the IPO which happened of SKS in 2010.
Yes.
And post that, I would say the RBI, in fact, got involved after a little bit of an issue which happened in AP, which is Andhra Pradesh, and set up a committee which came out with guidelines for this particular business. Right? So today you have a separate category of NBFCs called NBFC MFIs, microfinance institutions, which are specifically created and licensed by the RBI for the purpose of doing microfinance lending. There are about 12,000 NBFCs licensed by the RBI, but there are hardly 100 licensed NBFC MFIs in the country. And today we happen to be the 5th largest in the country.
Wow.
So I would say there are two forms of lending. There is something called as the joint liability group, where groups of 5 women come together and then essentially co-guarantee each other for a loan that they take. These loans are of very, very small size. It could be as small as 10,000 rupees, and it could be as large as maybe 60 or 80,000 rupees. The total maximum indebtedness allowed by the RBI is not more than 1.25 lakhs to a particular client, right? So that's essentially the definition of microfinance. And then there is the SHG program, which in fact you also mentioned something that you wanted to start. The SHG program is the self-help group program, which is primarily facilitated and supported by NABARD.
Yes.
Right. So the SHGs get formed and then they go and tie up with a PSU bank in terms of the funding or the credit requirement. Right. So two forms, one is the JLG and one is the SHG. Just to give you some numbers, as we talk by the end of September, we are expecting the sector on the JLG side to be close to about 2,25,000 crores of outstanding. And on the SHG side, it would be close to about 1,10,000 crores. Right. So totally there is almost about 3,35,000 crores of portfolio outstanding. Now, the important part here, Kalpana ji, is that one is, of course, the credit outstanding, which as you would have heard, is a fairly big number. The other thing is that between the SHG and the JLG program, almost 65 to 70 million women essentially get their credit needs fulfilled. Right. Now, when you say 65 to, let's say, 70 million women, and it could even be more because some amount of duplication happens between the two, on the JLG side, it's clearly about 58 million as we talk, and roughly about 58 million on the other side as well. So some amount of overlapping would be there, but I'm safely saying at least about 75 million women. Now, the important part is, out of that 75 million people who are end clients, direct beneficiaries, right? If you multiply that by 4 or 5, which is their family members, you are essentially talking about almost 300 to 350 million women or lives being impacted, right? About 75 million women, and through them, the lives of their family, which is about 300 million. So not many people know, and I'm very happy that you decided to sort of talk about financial inclusion with a specific focus on women, right? Not many people know that the sector is so large.
Yes.
More importantly, the fact that it reaches almost and touches the lives of about 350 million. And that's the reason why you will see that the government of India, the RBI, the state governments, all of them essentially are very, very particular about the progress being made and the kind of business growth which is happening, because they know that this is the most regulated and the most efficient way of reaching credit to the bottom of the pyramid. Right? Because otherwise, and let me also give you the stark contrast here, that because we are all RBI sort of regulated, there are very clear guidelines under which we need to work. So even our pricing that we can charge to the customers is highly regulated. So I keep explaining to people that if they do not take loan from, let's say, a formal credit institution, the informal or the private sector equivalent, basically the unorganized sector, essentially is about 10 times more expensive than the loan that we provide.
Absolutely. Yes.
And let me also give you some other statistics that there is a global body called Findex, which actually does a study on financial inclusion almost every 2 to 3 years. And also NABARD, in fact, comes out with their own survey and their results. About 2 years back, they came out with this finding, which is very interesting, that while 42% people in India had borrowed, right, only 8% had actually borrowed from a formal credit institution, a formally registered,
That's a low number.
yeah. So what happens is that most of the borrowing essentially is from friends and relatives, is from private finance companies, the unorganized sector, which charges 10 to 12 times more. So what we charge in a year is probably what they charge in a month. Right?
Yeah.
For example, in our kind of situation, with the very regulated pricing that we need to follow, for a 100 rupee loan, you would essentially pay close to about 10 rupees. 10 to 12 rupees, let's say, as interest for the whole year.
Oh.
That is the interest which a unorganized sector or a private financier would charge you per month. Okay. Which is why I say that you would probably be paying 10 to 12 times more than what essentially you would pay.
So, sir, do I say that there's lack of awareness, hence our women doesn't know about it, or why? What are the reasons that they are not able to access to this microfinance from the organized source than going to a shortcut or a unorganized authority?
Yeah. No, so I would say, Kalpana ji, as far as women are concerned, you would be happy to know that of all the 58 million that I mentioned on the JLG side, and roughly the same number on the SHG side as well, 99% of the customers are actually women.
Yes.
Right. And the reason why we give loans only to women is because they are far more credible, they are far more disciplined in terms of payment. Right. And they are very, very clear that whatever is the business which happened in a particular day, they would keep the money aside. True. And would not have any problem to sort of pay either on a weekly, fortnightly, or monthly basis.
Yes.
Whereas that same amount of discipline, we find it is not there as far as the men are concerned. Right. And that's the reason why. So either the family issues sort of come to the fore, or the fact that access to finance is not available. Right. So even today, we would say that of all the number that I spoke to you about, 3,35,000 crores, we still believe that the market is about only 33% penetrated, 1/3 penetrated.
Oh.
So 2/3 of the demand in the country is still not being supplied by formally registered institutions and being met with friends and relatives and the informal sector and the private sector, right? Which is the reason why you find those kind of rates.
Even the 1/3 is such a huge, women empowerment, what you have done. Imagine if the rest of the, thing falls in the line, we can empower so many women out there, and maybe they're not aware.
No, that's because, that's because in a country like India with 1.3 billion population, right? Even if you take about 30-40% as the size of the market for this business, right? You are talking about 400-500 million.
Yes.
Right. So the size in the country, I mean, we being the second most populous country in the world, all numbers will look very big.
Yeah. Yes. You're right. Absolutely. And but that's a huge empowerment. And when you empower our women, you empower the entire family, and that's what you have done it. Thank you so much for doing what you do. So, sir, do you also think that microfinancing and inclusive markets are related?
No, so see, let me just sort of clarify between the two. Financial inclusion is a term which is actually defined by the RBI, right? So it says that, like you and me do, because we are staying, let's say, in a metro, right? And I'm sure all of us get at least 2-3 calls a day trying to sell a credit card or a home loan or a personal loan, right? We have a bank account, we have access to insurance, we have access, let's say, to a pension fund. We have access to sort of investments, including, let's say, a personal loan or a credit card or a mortgage loan. But that access to finance is not available when you go to the hinterland, right? Whether it is the tier 1 cities or the tier 2 cities or the district headquarters or the villages, right? And I mean, like we keep saying, India lives in the villages. So to that extent, unless we are able to reach that formal credit channel to the hinterland, right? Always then the other option is, as I mentioned, 10 to 12 times more expensive credit, which comes with its own issues. And the supply is also limited. Because unless you are formally regulated and structured, you will not be able to raise equity and debt, which is required essentially to provide credit. So while you talk about, let's say, the private finance companies, the money lenders, the unorganized sector, they're all people who essentially are deploying whatever money they have, right? They are not able to borrow from outside and then deploy that, which is what we do, right? So when we say financial inclusion, we are talking about a whole set of products and services which is required by any normal human being, right? So you need access to a bank account, because without a bank account, you can't transact. Today, almost everything, essentially, you need a bank account to transact, right? You need to have access to credit when you require it. And all of us need access to credit. Somebody is buying a house, somebody is repairing a house, somebody buys a car, somebody buys, let's say, something else for the house. You need that money, right? And without formal credit, then you're left to the informal sector, which essentially then comes at those kind of rates. Pensions you need because today you are productive, you're healthy, you're able to work. But when you're, let's say, 60 plus or 65, why depend on, let's say, your children or somebody else to take care of, right? So even on the insurance side, God forbid any medical emergency were to come, right? The entire household then essentially gets impacted, because whatever money they have, whatever savings they have, essentially gets used up in that. So this whole set of 7 to 8 products that we are talking about essentially is what we define as financial inclusion. And while primarily we focus on credit in the MFI sector, because there is a meeting of the customer which is happening on a weekly, fortnightly, and monthly basis, we also tie up with insurance companies, tie ups with banks, tie up with people like people who provide investment options, remittance options, and then provide that services to the customer. And like you rightly said, the happiness of actually seeing the smile on somebody's face, right, who you have helped open a bank account and then given a credit line, right, is something which needs to be seen to be believed, right? And that's why we say that this is a business which is not only doing social good on one side, but is also commercially viable, because it is run under the guidelines of the RBI, right, which specify very clearly what you can do and cannot do. When you talk about larger financial markets, you're talking about the larger financial services domain, whether it is capital markets, investments, borrowings, assets, things like that. But when you're talking about bottom of the pyramid and grounded kind of people, essentially you're talking about these 5-6 key things which anybody requires.
Absolutely. A very sustainable program indeed. Yeah. So what difficulties do you think that a women faces dealing with these markets, and how can they overcome?
Right. So I think the biggest challenge, I would say, is to be able to differentiate between something which is formal and regulated and something which is unregulated. We're all aware of the various scams which have happened in the country. Right? I don't want to name them, but I'm sure all of us know the names that I'm talking about. People promise you a wonderful return, take your money, and then essentially after 2 years or 3 years, you find that the company is vanished. Right? A lot of agri companies, plantation companies, savings, investment companies have come up, which have essentially picked up money from very gullible people on the ground. And some of them have invested 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, their life's earnings, essentially hoping that it will get doubled or tripled in the next 3 to 5 years, and then essentially lost that. So I would say the biggest challenge essentially is financial literacy. Right, which is being able to differentiate between, is this a good, credible institution which is regulated by a government regulator that I'm dealing with, or is the antecedent of this company questionable? So that's the first, right? The second one essentially is basically understanding the financial terms that you have to understand before you transact with them. So if you're taking a loan, you need to understand what is the liability that you're taking, right? What is the interest rate and the other financial charges which are there? How many installments or when do you need to pay back? God forbid in a particular month, if you're not able to pay, then what happens? Right? All of that. And when will you finish the loan? By the way, if you have some extra money, can you prepay without any penalty so that I'm able to reduce the interest burden? Right? So the biggest challenge, I would say, one is access. Right? If you're staying in a city like Bombay, then obviously you have access because you can call up. People call you and offer you a lot of products. But if you're staying, let's say, in a village, or if you're staying in a small town, then essentially you're left to what is available to you either online or through a phone. Today, of course, a lot of online services sort of providers are there, but earlier in the physical world, it would be even more difficult. Second is understanding the terms and the responsibilities that you are actually signing on to when you access a facility from that. And third is, of course, understanding the risks. So if you're investing, right, today, even let's say a fixed deposit in a bank, right, is not something that you can be 100% sure is 100% safe, right? Because you've got all sorts of banks. Some are private, some are cooperative, some are sort of cooperative banks. Of course, most of them are regulated by the RBI, but then you cannot say that every bank is like, let's say, SBI.
Imagine.
Right? State Bank of India, we know that is the Government of India bank, and government is the main shareholder. And you know that it might offer you a lesser return, but you know that it's a very safe bank.
Very safe. Right.
So one needs to understand the risk of what the transaction that you're doing, and God forbid if it goes wrong, then what is the implication? So these are some 2-3 key things which are important before somebody accesses and enters into a transaction.
All right. So you spoke about financial literacy terms and risk, and you also said that, I mean, there's a lot of lack of, reachability, because in town you can reach, but so are you doing some digital awareness or reaching out to them, or it is they who have to reach out to you? So what is
that's where that's where our sector is very different, right? When I talk about the larger microfinance sector, right, and all the sort of companies which operate in that, one is that we don't wait for the customer to come to us. We actually go to them, right? So the product and the service is actually available in the same village town square, right, where everybody sort of meets maybe in the evening for a cup of tea, right? So it's doorstep service. Right? Normal. So it's available where they are. One. Second is that the process for actually getting a loan is very, very, I would say, smooth and very, very, very concise. So that in fact, most of the people do not know that we take the customers who are interested in availing a loan through almost 2 to 3 sessions on financial literacy. And financial literacy, exactly as I explained to you, that if you're taking a loan, what is the implication? Like, what are you signing on to? For example, if it's a joint liability group program, each of the 5 ladies are actually co-guaranteeing the other. Right? So God forbid, even one of the months, one of your group members does not have the money, or she has something which is a shortfall, the remaining 4 actually have to pay up for it.
Yes.
Right?
So that's a ultimate guarantee.
So that's one. The second one is to understand things like, for example, the interest. What is the interest rate being charged? Right? What is this extra amount that you're paying, let's say, for insurance premium? Right? What is the tenure of the loan? What happens if you do not pay? So all those things essentially are explained to her, including the credit bureau report. Right? So they are explained that all the transactions which are happening, whether it's you taking money or you paying back, all of these are getting reported to the credit bureau. Tomorrow, let's say you default with any company, even the other company that you apply to will check your credit bureau report before actually giving you a loan. Right? So that's the kind of financial literacy session that we take them through. Yes. In fact, RBI about a year back actually spoke to us and wanted to run actually a depositor awareness program through all the customers, right? So the entire 60 million customers or 6 crore customers that I'm talking to are being met by us on a weekly or a fortnightly or a monthly basis. So we have about half an hour to 45 minutes time with them, right? Literally every month.
Monthly. Wow.
Yes. And that's a wonderful opportunity where you can talk to them apart from collecting the money and clearing the dues which are there, including the receipts. And today, most of it actually happens digitally as well, cashless. Right. So all our almost 99%, I would say, of our disbursements today are cashless, straight into the bank account of the customer. Right. And repayments also, I would say, almost 50% of the repayments are actually cashless, which means she has money, she keeps money in the account, and on that particular day, we are able to debit that account and get the
Yes,
money,
yes.
which over a period of time should reach a sort of higher number of close to, let's say, 100% over the next year or so,
Oh,
right?
that's
So, yeah,
something like how
so
credit card works. So by default,
absolutely.
yeah.
So on a particular day, I mean, you know your loan repayment date. On that particular day, one day prior to that, you ensure there is money in the account, and then the debit happens from your account.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what are the various dimension of financial inclusion?
Hmm. No, so I spoke about it earlier. The entire financial inclusion gamut deals with a bank account, a credit facility, insurance, both life and non-life, right? Pensions, so that you can save for your old age, investment options, so that somebody who's, let's say, even in a village today, do you know that you can do a systemic sort of investment plan, an SIP, for as low as 500 rupees a month?
Oh.
So what SEBI and the mutual fund industry have done is to bring down the minimum quantum which is required for investment down to a number which anybody in the country can afford, as long as you have a sort of economic activity which is live and kicking, right? So investment options, and then of course things like remittances and all of that, right? So ideally all of us should have access to a choice on all these options which are essentially there, right? If you want, let's say, to buy a life insurance policy, you should have the option of comparing between the 2, 3 ones which are available, and then being able to decide on what suits you the best, right? If you want to take credit, then you should be able to compare vis-a-vis 2, 3 options and say this is the best because one, it is lower in terms of pricing. Second, they are giving me the loan that I'm asking for. And third, I'm able to get a loan within a shorter period of time rather than having to wait for a month or so.
That's fantastic, sir. I mean, they have literally taken into consideration every aspect of the concept. So that's
Yes.
so amazing. So, sir, do you think that it is harder for women to get into this financial market than men?
Well, it depends on the product that you're trying to access, right? I would say from a
Example.
borrowing perspective, at least the microfinance industry focuses on women, right? Almost 99% customers, as I mentioned to you, we are actually women because of the fact that we
Yes.
give money for sort of productive use. Essentially, she has a small business already. It could be a tea stall, it could be a small eatery, it could be a small grocery shop, it could be a small vegetable vending place that she has. So that business is already there, and we are giving her money to be able to expand that business, right?
Yes.
And that money and the repayment of that money essentially comes from the business that she is already into, right? And the reason why we do more frequent repayments is because then it's easier for her to pay rather than wait till the end of the month or the end of the quarter, right? And then pay a much larger amount. If it's a weekly product, then the number is 1/4 of what you would pay in a normal month.
Yes.
Half if you were to pay on a fortnightly basis, and the full in case you were to pay on a monthly basis. So that's essentially how it works. And with that money, we hope that she is able to expand her business. And in most cases, what we also find is that, at least I would say in 50% cases, the fact that she's got the credit and she's expanded the business also means that she will then employ one more person.
Yes.
Right? And that you can understand that if with 60 million customers, even if 30 million of them were to grow their business and employ one more person, you're talking about 30 million new jobs being created.
Jobs. Yes.
Right.
And that's
So I would say from a product perspective, credit on the microfinance side is primarily being targeted towards women. Right. Now, accessing the other markets, I would say today with the kind of channels that most insurance companies, mutual funds, and the other financial services products companies, including banks, through BC, through sort of their agents that they have appointed, I would say most towns, most villages do have availability of these kind of products where a customer can actually apply. Now, for a woman, the difficult part is she prefers somebody who can give her doorstep service, right? Rather than leaving her area of work, taking a bus or a tempo and going to the main district headquarters to be able to apply. Whereas for a man, it is easier because he is anyway moving out.
Yes.
right? And if he's sitting in an office or if he's sitting in a business establishment, there are always people who are approaching from their side. So doorstep service works better with women, and that's the reason why our industry essentially focuses on that mode of sort of delivery in terms of service.
But that's amazing. I mean, if you are giving the doorstep services, because I think the problem it still prevails in the mindset of people, and many women suffer because of that. Well, so what are your views
Right.
on cryptocurrency?
Well, that's something which I think would really emerge in a more IT enabled world, right, in the future, because like in most things, it's already happening that today you can't really hide any information, right?
Yes,
Earlier
yes.
you wouldn't know what happened in the next village. Today, you know what happened in the
Yes,
other country, which is so many
yes,
thousand kilometers away, because of the internet
yes,
and news and all of that. I think what will happen over a period of time is that the physical borders of countries which are there today, right,
uh,
would essentially need to evolve into something different,
okay.
right? I think there will be a larger global village which would happen, and in that kind of scenario, people who are IT enabled, and today everything is IT enabled, right? Whether it's a small school kid, let's say attending online classes because of the COVID pandemic, or let's say a working person or a business person, or people like, let's say, you or me, all of us have access to the internet, right? And are able to then essentially create a currency which is more traded online.
Yes.
You have a certain value that you created, which then converts to a certain currency, which is really cryptocurrency,
Yes.
right? But having said that, it is still not legal from in most countries, right?
Yes.
It is seen from an illegal perspective, because obviously everybody is scared of losing the control and what it could do.
Yes.
But if you look at news today, right? Earlier people resisted, but today you cannot stop.
Yes,
So
yes,
at some point of time, it will become larger and bigger than what it is today,
yeah.
right? And governments will need to decide, including central banks, as to how will you deal with it,
True.
because it is certainly going to be a reality.
Yes, yes. And I also think that it's really good way until you are really careful and informed about it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, yeah. The knowledge and the right knowledge and awareness is very important. So,
Correct.
what reason do you think we are prevailing because of which women are deprived of these financial markets?
No, so as I mentioned to you earlier, it's more from an access perspective, right? And typically what happens is that in the household, let's say the purse strings still tend to be controlled by the men, right? Where the sort of head of the house, or whatever, from that perspective. So to that extent, investment decisions are still being made, I would say, more by the man in the house rather than women. Except the small amount of money that she has in her own account, in her own bank account, which then she can then use to decide what she wants to do based on the advice that she has, whether she does a fixed deposit, or let's say a RD, or basically buy something like, let's say, an SIP from a mutual fund, right? So I think the challenge more is in terms of being able to access that service, right? And second is in terms of, let's say, who has the larger money, or who's sort of thought to be a bit more financially savvy than her. But I think the fact is that the even the man in the house in that kind of let's say a geography is probably the same. So I don't think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally. So maybe it could be because women are generally because of lack of collateral property and lack of experience. It could be that.
So if you are taking a secured credit, then obviously collateral comes into play, right?
Yes.
The loans that we give in the microfinance industry are more unsecured, right? And it is what we say that the collateral is the social collateral that we have created amongst the 5 women who are coming together to take a loan.
Yes,
right? You're right. On the formal credit side, if you are looking for, let's say, a personal loan or a mortgage loan or something else, right? Then the person with the more active bank account, right? And the person who has the property or the collateral in his name essentially would be the name through which the loan would be given. But you would be happy to know in a lot of cases today, a lot of state governments are actually giving benefits if you are actually registering the property in the name of a lady. Right? The stamp duty, the registration charges are lesser. Right? Most of the mortgage loans I've noticed the lenders actually prefer to give on the joint name. Right? So that both the husband and the wife essentially are responsible for the loan that they've taken. And in most cases, then the house or the property that they've taken also tends to be in a dual name.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so the very last question, what measures do you think should be adapted to avoid the problem, and what should be done to increase the inclusion of women in terms of financial inclusion, of course?
Yeah. No, I would say it would happen. You are also seeing a generational change, right? For example, in our own industry, I would say 10 years, 15 years back, right? One would probably not find the customer that you're dealing with having even a mobile phone.
Yes.
Then they moved on to feature phones, which are very simple phones just to make the call, right? Or they shared that phone along with other members of the house. Today, let me tell you that there are customers who actually walk around with smartphones. Right? So from that, and also imagine what will be the generational change when the daughter of that customer of ours today, let's say supposed to be in the market, let's say next year or the year after that. Then you're dealing with somebody who's literally a retail banking customer like you and me. And that lady then, the girl who's then, let's say, got married and settled somewhere and then applying for a loan, right, essentially is going to deal with you on a more digital way. The application process, the credit into her bank account, the repayment that she makes, all of them will be very different and maybe through her mobile phone. So to that extent, one is seeing that generational change already happening. See, this business will essentially become what retail banking is over a period of time, because that's the big base of the bottom of the pyramid, where you have so many customers who essentially, once they have taken their first loan, right, become then used to the discipline of paying an installment. Then she qualifies for a bigger loan. And that's how then essentially she takes more and more control of her own life.
True. And also these are important because in today's world, both men and women are treated equally, and this just adds to the barrier.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, sir, for your wonderful inputs. And financial inclusion and microfinancing have become a crucial part of our economy, and it has helped a lot of people too. So now moving on further to a quick rapid fire, which you're not aware about it. Who inspires you the most?
Well, I would say certainly if you were to talk about the profession, Dr. Mohammed Yunus, right, who is the founder of Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, right, who along with Grameen Bank got the Nobel Prize, Nobel Peace Prize for discovering microfinance, right, is certainly somebody that I look up to, because what he has done is to really discover a methodology of lending to somebody who doesn't have any security or collateral to offer. Right? Somebody who does not have a salary slip. But what he invented was the fact that the social collateral of 5 people coming together, 5 ladies who know each other coming together, right? And then you being able to lend on that kind of format, right, is something which opened the doors of credit to millions of women across the world.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks to him who has got this innovation. Yes. And so what is the greatest risk you have ever taken?
Greatest risk is to leave working in a commercial sector, right? I was working as a deputy CEO of a bank in Ahli Bank, So leaving that and coming back to India, right, 10 years back, and starting with the group that I work with, starting a small microfinance company from zero.
Yes.
It is, I think, the biggest risk that I've taken, because I had a tax-free salary there. I left all of that and came back here
And thank God
set
you
up
took
something.
the risk. Imagine you're empowering so many women out here. Such a pride and movement. I mean, you're investing so much of your time and the selfless service, I would rather say it, because you are also a huge part of nation building. Empowering our women is like, again, empowering the families. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And so, what is the most memorable moment of your life?
Well, the most memorable moment is after all the humble beginnings that we started in 2010, right? When I came back to India, uh, creating, as I said today, the fifth largest NBFC MFI in the country, right? And being recognized by the sector about a year back as in terms of Arohan being the best MFI in the country, right? Essentially, is the proudest moment. Right, number one. Number two, being part of the industry, being able to participate at the sectoral association level, right? As and the honor of being the chair of the governing board, right, is certainly something which I feel very happy about.
With so much of power comes so much of responsibility, and you're yes, and you're doing it so beautifully. Well, so if you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
I would really say being able to sort of do far more than what one has achieved till now, right? Clearly, I have both from a sectoral and a company perspective, clearly 4 5 key things that I would want to do before I hang up my boots and do a more relaxed kind of job rather than a full-time
Yeah,
day-to-day job, right? That's what I would work on.
wonderful. And a place where you love being the most?
Uh, Kerala, which is where I'm originally from. It's God's own
God's own
country. So
country.
you
Yeah,
can.
lovely place. Yes, yes. I'm from South Bangalore, and
Okay.
yeah, so Kerala is again down south. So yes, it's one of my
I
favorite.
think I think the purity of the place, the simplicity of the people, and the healthy food,
Yes,
right? Essentially, the clean water, the
everything,
unpolluted
everything.
atmosphere.
Yes, yes, and
Yeah.
the
And
Ayurveda.
do you know that that state is 100% literate?
Yes, I.
It's got
Yes,
100% financial
yes,
inclusion.
yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
on most parameters, it is number one.
Yes, yes, it is number one, and I can see the pride you're taking in. Well, your favorite hobby? Do you have any favorite hobby?
Well, listening to soft music actually, that's what relaxes me whenever I get that extra
Hmm.
bit of time on a weekend, right? Yeah, especially something with a classical twist is always something which is far more. I mean, it really soothes you and inspires you.
True, true, true. And the very last question, if you were to be the prime minister for a day, what is the first thing you would do?
Well, I think what is important is to ensure that most of the projects, right, which are being continued from the past or the new ones which are being actually announced, right, it's very important to ensure that they are tracked very, very efficiently towards completion and reaching the intended beneficiary. Right. So, what happens really at a very higher level is that the thought process is very clear, right? The intent is unquestionably, right? I don't think there is any issue in terms of the intent. But what really happens is, and it happens everywhere, even in the companies that we run, sometimes what we think at the top level, what we are able to agree with the management team, what we're able to then communicate down the line, right? Essentially, and what is really the impact and the change that you've been able to do on the ground, right? So I think I'd focus more on tracking the programs far more effectively, and it's not easy because you're dealing with people at various levels of various thought processes, their own intrinsic, let's say, beliefs, right? And as a result, it's very, very difficult to actually ensure 100% transmission of your vision down to the ground. So I would focus on program implementation.
That's very important, sir. I mean, and this has to be also given a lot of, focus on. And nothing is easy. There are a lot of challenges, but jab tak
Sure.
thought process clear hai, vision clear hai, so I think it's not
Absolutely.
that difficult as well.
And I think it's important that the beneficiary, intended beneficiary, gets the benefit.
Gets the benefit.
Right. So I think things like Aadhaar, things like direct benefit transfer, these are all examples where the
True.
ultimate beneficiary has got the intended benefit.
True, absolutely.
Right. The fact that today most adult Indians, including let's say infants or children, have basically an Aadhaar, right, which is your proof of identity.
Yes.
And in most cases, I would say things like, let's say, the DBT, whether it is the rural employment program wages, whether it's a benefit that the government can give to, let's say, widows or pensions or children, from an educational perspective, or even during the pandemic, right? We are all aware about the small help that the government has given every month to ladies who had the Jan Dhan Yojana account with a certain criteria, right? So at least you've eliminated the middleman.
True, absolutely.
Money goes straight into your account.
Yeah. And imagine in between pillage or thousands of crores of rupees, and who is accountable? I mean, who is going to be accountable?
Absolutely.
But at least
today we are talking about one nation, one ration card.
One nation.
Right. So with the IT development which is there, right? Why should I get stuck only to a particular place, and then when I move, especially for the migrants, people who are actually moving from one place to the other.
Yes.
If a system is capturing whether I've taken my quota for rice this month, then wherever I go, they will say no. But if I've not taken it from here and I've taken it from somewhere else because I was traveling, I should be able to get that.
Yes. And this is so empowering again. And the secured feeling what they have, ke chalo meri cheez mere paas hai. So that yes, that is again very important. Sahi kaha, sir. Well, before we conclude, a few word of wisdom or an advice you would like to give to our audience.
Well, I would really end by saying that a lot of people think, right? Fewer talk about it, and even fewer than that actually end up doing it.
Yes.
Right. So it's very easy to think and get confused about so many options on what you want to do and how you want to do it. But then unless you have the ability to understand that what is relevant for me and what is possible for me in the geography, in the sector, in the situation that I am in, right, that I need to then translate that thought process into talking. Because when you talk about it, you actually give more energy to that particular thought.
Yes.
Right. And post that, just talking about it is also not enough.
Yes.
Finally, you need to start. Right. If you're thinking of studying, you need to start studying. If you're thinking about setting up a business, you need to start the process of actually setting it up. Yeah, because otherwise the thought, the talk and the action does not finally complete. Right. So my advice having worked for 32 years, I would also say that it's very, very important to have patience, right? Because it happens. I'm sure even you meet up with people who just change jobs every 2 years or 3 years, right? Which essentially means that there is something that they are either not able to adjust or settle down in a particular environment and being able to contribute, or their own aspirations in terms of growth mean that they just want to change a job every year.
Yes.
Right? How can you then create value or leave behind your contribution to a place, right? If you were going to be flipping jobs every 2 to 3 years.
Yes. So you mean to say that it's not okay to flip the job?
Well, you can't do it every year.
You can't do it every year unless you are following some of your passion and doing your own startup.
I'm saying that even I have changed jobs when I was younger. But over a period of time, when you get more mature, then you understand you need to have more patience, and it's not going to be very different in the other place than how it is here. Right?
एकदम सही कहा सर आपने. And a message for my organization, Social Tables, is if you would want to give some message to us.
No, ma'am, I would say I went through the material that you had sent. Really, very happy to see what you have managed to sort of start and keep it sustained, right? A lot of people start a lot of things, right? But then you're not able to give it the time, the effort, and the thought process, and more importantly, the networking which is required for making these initiatives a success, right? So the three, four things that you mentioned, I'm very happy that with the background that you mentioned about yourself, right? You're able to keep it open, keep it moving and growing, and that's more important, right? And I think in these kind of activities, more you network, more you get like-minded people, right? It'll then grow even stronger.
Yes, thank
Right?
you so much.
Really, yeah. And I'm sure even for you in the night when you are, putting your head to the pillow, right? You feel happy that at some point of time, whatever number of people you've been able to help,
Help.
right? That's the good karma that you've been able to do.
सही कहा सर और आज अभी तो मुझे लगता है कर्मा ही काम में आता है because having fighting so many battles in life and moreover this has been always my passion. This is something what I've been doing and COVID happened and then again this was innovative way to again come out and help people and get do this leadership talk as well. We are doing a show with Government of India. We are doing sorry, what do you call Abdul Kalam Innovation Series with Government of India.
Okay.
So हमारा former president का birthday is on October 15th, so we'll be starting that series again. So it is so जैसे आपने कहा when you go to sleep you should feel very gratified
Absolutely.
or you should feel very contentment होना चाहिए कि चलो भले ही एक लोगों की मदद की लेकिन वो तो किया मैंने. So
बिल्कुल.
yes. And yeah, thank you so much, sir. And let me take an opportunity to give you a vote of thanks. It's a great honor and privilege to propose vote of
Welcome.
thanks to Mr. Manoj Kumar Nabiaji, who despite his busy schedule has found time to grace this special interaction. We are extremely grateful to you, sir, for sharing your words of encouragement and giving us valuable inputs. Your eminent presence has indeed made this interaction a memorable one, and we unite to thank you from bottom of our heart for your kindness, interest and support. We wish you all the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you so much and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Wish you too.
Welcome. Bye.